Hello, hello, hello. I'm so excited to be back with you. I had a week's vacation, and this is episode 50. That's really exciting. I didn't realize we'd done so many together. That's so lovely. 50 times have been shared with A Course in Miracles and non-duality. So I would like to continue today a little bit with level confusion. I think that's an interesting way that it's been approached. Just a second. You know, we can think of it as level confusion in us, and there certainly is level confusion. And here's what I interpret in a simple way what level confusion really means is that we think of the attributes of God and we think those are not of us because we believe that we're these limited bodies. And once we think of ourselves as a body and believe that we're a body with the body's limitations and being born and going to die, then we're confused. We're insane. We are asleep. We're not our right mind. Any of those words. But there's another way to think about it. And that's that, yes, that's all true. And the Course's brilliance is that it speaks to us at all these levels. So it appears as though the Course is confused. It appears as though the Course says one thing one place and another thing another place. And I'll tell you what I mean with some examples. But the Course is not at all confused. It just knows that most of us would not have continued with the book if they didn't talk to us about, if the book didn't talk to us about an ego, a separate self, love and fear, choose again. Choose again infers there's a person to choose again. And I'd like to read to you just a wonderful quote from Nisiddhartha again. The person merely appears to be like the space within the pot, which appears to have the shape and volume and smell of the pot. See that you are not what you believe yourself to be. Fight with all your strength at your disposal against the idea that you are nameable and describable. Because you understand, this is me talking, that once you think of yourself with a name, once you think of yourself as, I have silver blonde hair and I'm wearing white earrings and I'm wearing a green shirt and I have long hair and blah, blah, blah. Once I do that, I've had it. Now, if I do it with the knowing that that's not me, if I do it with the knowing that there is a self, there is one self, and that I live with God. There is one life, it says on lesson 167. There is one life, and that I share with God. But we could say there is one self, and that I share with God. And there's no difference between the Father and the Son. So there's no difference between you and me. You know, one thing non-duality does that is very helpful, I think. And the Course is also non-dual occasionally, and I'm going to bring up some of those occasions on lesson 167. One of the things that non-duality does is it asks us to go before. And before I had a body, and before I had a name, and before, and before, and before. I'll tell you what I mean. Before I had a name, I still was oneself. I was a being. I wasn't even considered a body because I didn't know where I ended as a baby and where you began. But first there was an I, and then there was a you. And before there was an I, there was just everything. Any of us who've had a baby as an adult know that babies come with that oceanic feeling, that knowing that they're just part of the whole. They don't know where they begin and where they end, where the food begins, where the food goes away. Pretty soon they realize there's a feeding parent, and then they get scared when the feeding parent goes away. But that's all development. That's all taught. That's all human development. That's part of the one life that we all live. You know, there are certain places in the Course that they talk about two worlds, the real world and the world we make it up. But there's only one world. We imagine another world, and our imaginary world is not a world that is real. But there is only one world and one life. So let's look at 167 from the point of view of non-level confusion, if you will. What does that look like? In my words, if there is no level confusion, then there's oneness. Oneness is just like the oceanic feeling. In order to participate in this world and negotiate the world, it is useful to have an ego in the sense of a manager who knows how to buy tickets, who knows how to navigate to a train station and be on the train on time and pack a suitcase with the appropriate clothes for the event and the climate. And you know what I mean, all the things you need to do to talk to other bodies as though they're separate, because that's required if you want to participate in the world as we know it. But we can do that with a light touch. We can do that as though we're on stage, as though this is our King Lear part, as Rupert would say. He loves King Lear and telling us, you know, that the real self is not King Lear, but King Lear, in his metaphor, forgets that he's playing a part, and then he gets depressed about all the things that belong to King Lear that are not part of his life. And we can take that metaphor and say the real self is united with our Creator, is one with each other. There are no others. And like Nisargadatta says, fight with all your might. What does he say? fight with all the strength at your disposal. He doesn't really mean fight. He just means resist the temptation to believe we're the part of King Lear, to believe that we're whatever our role is, Lynn or Rosalind in this world, and we have responsibilities and so on. We can play the part, but we don't have to 100% believe it. The best actors who make us believe give themselves over to it wholeheartedly, to their parts. But they can come back to their real self. So if we look at lesson 167, there was one life, and that I share with everyone. It says there are not different kinds of life, for life is like the truth. It does not have degrees. It is one condition in which all share. Here's what I love. Like all his thoughts, it has no opposite. So when we think of this world, the world as we know it, the world we play in, it's completely about opposites. That is really what defines this world. Tall and short, fat and skinny, right and wrong, rich and poor, good and evil, up and down, and so on. So the course, quite a bit of this course says, choose again. Well, we've gone over there is no chooser because there's no separate being. But when we forget, there are the levels. When we forget, when we're asleep, then we need to wake up. But holding on to the opposite, holding on to good and evil, whatever the polarities are, is not going to get us outside of the polarities. And that's where the gifts are, in my opinion. It says here in paragraph 2, in this world, there appears to be a state that is life's opposite. And then they talk about death and that there is no such thing as death. But if there's no such thing as death, there is no such thing as life. We are living, but we weren't born. We continue before and after this body. That's what it's talking about. It says you cannot die in chapter 3, in paragraph 3. And then it goes on to say in 4 that death, the idea of a death, is the thought that we are separate from each other and from God. It's a belief that conditions change, emotions alternate because of causes we cannot control and did not make and cannot change. It's a big one. It's a really big one. And yet we like to think of ourselves as responsible for everyone. And maybe I'll take on that responsibility lesson, because I think there's another way to think of it. If we think of it, maybe I'll take it on right now from memory. Mostly we take it on as a belief in a separate self. So we caused everything, and everything is as we had wished it. But what if that lesson is not about a separate self, Everything is as life wished it. So why would we fight it? But what's the it? We have a lot of beliefs about whatever has just happened. We link it to our past. We link it to our desires for the future and what's going to happen next. All of that is nonsense. It's part of the thinking that is the small mind, the perceptions, the beliefs, the sensations, the ideas, all of those early lessons that show us that the small mind can't be trusted. First we say this, then we say that. All of those thoughts can be ignored. If we didn't take them so seriously and involved ourselves, we would actually be available to the present time. That is the only time we can experience presence, awareness, life, God, even if you will, Holy Spirit, which is God, which is us, no difference. There are no separations. We create these ideas because we don't believe we're connected to God. So we have another level, Holy Spirit, which is going to translate for us. Don't need that. Once we're in oneness, we don't need a communicator. We don't need an altar. We are it. And every moment is new. So we're not the victim of the past. And we are not the creators of what's next. Except insofar as we're part of life. Not we, the separate person, manifests this and that. That's more ego as far as I can tell. Yes, we're powerful because we're part of everything. We're part of the power of God. So yes, we're manifestors, but not from the separate self. Today, on paragraph 10, on lesson 167, it says, let us today be children of the truth and not deny our holy heritage. Our life is not as we imagine it. Who changes life because he shuts his eyes or makes himself what he is not, because he sleeps and sees and dreams an opposite to what he is? That's my big theme of today. When we're stuck in polarities, our thoughts are about good and bad, up and down, whatever it is, rich and poor. Let's notice we're in opposites, we're in polarities. Nor will we let imagined opposites to life abide even an instant where the thought of life eternal has been set by God himself. You can say God, you can say oneness, you can say life. The words don't matter. What matters is what's in our hearts. What do we mean by hearts? For me, an equivalent to heart is knowing. Knowing has nothing inflated. It's not like I'm right. I'm right is egotistical. It's all about a separate self, and it's all about my small thinking. I like what's in our hearts because it gets us out of thinking. Thinking is the main thing, the main obstacle. Small mind thinking is the main obstacle to freedom, to oneness, to God, to knowing our power, to knowing our unlimited selves that are beyond a body. But how do we get to our hearts? Well, it's kind of interesting to me because whenever we quiet the mind, and by quieting the mind, I don't mean sitting on a meditation cushion. Fine if you're doing that, nothing against that. But for me, it's about not believing the random thinking, which all of us have. And when the Course talks about being responsible for our thinking, I think the deeper place is that we take responsibility for buying in. Thoughts are like someone knocking on your door. Non-duality does not consider the thoughts to be our own because they're no separate people. So it joins with the Course in that belief there are no separate people. So how are there creators of separate thought? The thoughts happen like someone knocking on your door. You can't stop or prevent someone from knocking on your door, right? I mean, you don't control the world. Someone can knock on your door. But do you have to answer? Do you have to say, come on in and have tea? Do you have to say, oh, I join with whatever it is you're selling, and I'll add to it, and let's go have an adventure together? I think that's what, on a deeper level, the Course is pointing to. Yes, it just spends a lot of time getting us to see our thoughts. But many of us who are listening to ACIM Gather in this radio show, this is not our first rodeo. So we're quite aware that we have negative thoughts, that we have crazy thoughts, that we have attack thoughts. We're pretty much aware that our thinking is junk. But what happens very often is that people go into imagined unworthiness because they have these quote unquote negative attack thoughts. Well, there is no such thing as an unworthy being. There's the polarities, the opposites, which are of this world. But oneness does not have an opinion on a storm, right? I mean, we're not imagining that there's judgments. We just accept, that there are hurricanes. We don't say, oh, the weather is evil, because no, it happens. The sunshine happens, the storms happen. It's very, very useful to release your worth from your thoughts and really play with an experiment that they happen, but we don't have to join them. They're part of living in this world that those things happen. They're part of your conditioning, they're part of your interactions, they're part of your being a sentient being in a body. But We don't have to own them. I know that on some level that sounds like I'm being heretical to the Course in Miracles. There is the level when you first do the course where you have to look at your thoughts and see them as your own and see what kind of junk they are. But there's a time and a place, I believe, that's just me talking, but it also is what the non-dual believe. It's just an offering. It's not a belief. Try it on yourself. See if it brings more peace. Feeling unworthy because you had attack thoughts brings no benefit. It doesn't bring less of those in the future. It might bring more. So try it out. See if it improves your quality of life, your peace, your joy, your contentment. Think of that. If you just consider thoughts as something that happened, that you observe to see if it's a useful thought, like take a sweater, it's going to be cold out, or stop at the light, it's turning gray, turning yellow, or whether it's you're a worthless human being because you were jealous and because you wanted to hurt that person. It was a momentary energy that went through you. It means nothing unless you believe it and follow it up with more thoughts and actions. What if you just went, whoa, what a bunch of junk that was. Wow, that wasn't me. I prefer not to think those thoughts. I think only thoughts with God. Join me now. And a deep breath, welcoming the freedom that's available right now. I have one life, and that I live with God, as God. What if you held yourself to the value that you hold God? That would not be egotistical. Take it in. You would treat each person with utmost kindness and love, with no preferences for that person or this person. All would get equal love from you, equal concern, equal attention, equal kindness, equal extension. Every time you withhold from someone, you're withholding from yourself. There is only one self, united with our Creator. That one self is you. That one self is me. We're whole and complete. The real self needs nothing. It does not need improvement because it's never judged. The real self, the true I, does not judge anyone. That doesn't mean you're a bad person because you still judge. When you judge, you're not coming from your true I. So you can relax and go, what's before that judgment? Before that separate person had that opinion? Let's step back and go before that. Before that was just a vastness, an energy that is expansive. How is it expansive? Well, it has no limits. Where do you actually end? Where does your energy end? And where do I begin? And are we truly connected? Even though you're listening where you're listening and I'm over here, what if there was only the space that connects us, the space that is us? We're not separate from the space. Thank you so much for being with me today. Namaste. Bye. Mwah.